Hi everyone, I'm Fava, and while Austin is in charge of all of the mentoring, I am organising the community engagement and I guess building a movement around the ican network. So the work we do around building a movement is essential to the mission of the ican network. It creates a society that we want to see around an individual on the autism spectrum. While ican focuses on the individual with mentoring, we're committed to asking society to rethink autism. So we engage with a wide audience to grow a movement of people to see each person on the autism spectrum as someone with individual strengths. This rethink isn't required to many of the people who already know somebody on the autism spectrum, but our job is to make sure that every teacher, every employer, and every member of society understands what an autism rethink is. Rather than speak about autism in deficits, society is ready to discover a strengths-based ican approach to autism, and we're the people who are ready to deliver the message. My journey to the ican network started as a psychology student when I was provided an opportunity to work with people on the autism spectrum. And this led to years of work with young people on the autism spectrum. When I think of an autism rethink, I think of one boy in particular who, although he was doing well at school, saw autism as something that was quite limiting. And he saw autism as something that was stopping him from being included. The conversations that I had with people in society told me that autism was still spoken about in deficits. People spoke about autism with the stereotypes or the negatives that they'd heard about in the media, or with the low expectations that they'd been told to expect from autism. This didn't describe the resilient group of individuals, all with their own personal strengths that I'd worked with over the years. But it did explain why the boy I worked with saw autism as something that was limiting rather than limitless. Furthermore, this was a society that he'd be entering into, where he'd be working, where he'd be studying, where he'd be looking for work, or where he'd be living in. The perceptions that people held created a society that wasn't good enough for him, or the hundreds of people on the autism spectrum that I'd met. Like Mark, I was lucky enough to see Chris Barney's TED Talk as well as Tim Chan's. And I knew that the ican network were the group who were ready to ask society for this shift towards an autism rethink. We are an organisation that grew out of a talk, so like no other organisation, the ican network understands how important talks can be in building a movement and asking people to see the strengths of the autism spectrum. We also know that people on the autism spectrum have fewer opportunities for employment. We've killed two birds with one stone, and recently we've developed a speakers agency, where people on the autism spectrum are provided paid opportunities to create the society that we all need. One of these speakers is Penny Robinson, ican network ambassador, who will now provide us with her ican story. Thank you.
Depending on their experiences, we can talk on a range of topics including diagnosis and disclosure, education, independence and work. One story that I often share in my talks is my journey to becoming an assistant lecturer. When I was a young child, my speech was atrocious, so I needed speech therapy when I was in kinder, as well as when I was in grades 4 to 6 and also Year 8. So as you can imagine, by Year 8, I was just a little bit self-conscious about my so-called speech problem. I got panic attacks in the school assembly hall in Year 12, which is a similar environment to the uni lecture theatre or even this space at NAB. But my panic attacks weren't standing on the stage, it was sitting in the audience like you are. After I finished my undergraduate studies at uni, I started tutoring, first online and then some small face-to-face tutorials. And now I'm an assistant lecturer at Monash University. So I write tutorial materials, and this year I was involved with the redevelopment of a unit that had over 450 students in it. So that was a little bit of a challenge, writing a semester's worth of tutorials as well as lectures. As an assistant lecturer, this is my view of the lecture theatre now. There's a lot more computers than when I was a student. It's taken me many baby steps to where I am today. I wouldn't have imagined 15 years ago, getting panic attacks, that I'd be able to do the public speaking and lecturing that I do now. In fact, when I was an invited speaker at APAC in Brisbane earlier in the year, I was more stressed about driving to the airport after lots of teaching in unpredictable peak hour traffic than my actual talk. At the Victorian Autism Conference, Rita Jordan said in her plenary, "The biggest gift you can give to people with autism is time." I believe that everyone has their own journey and their own timeline. Don't be afraid to do it your way, in your own time. Take lots of small stepping stones to achieve your goals, rather than fewer, bigger, more daunting ones. My family have been extremely supportive of me growing up, especially my almost 95-year-old grandma, who's here tonight. So to quote Josh Gorman, "You raised me up